Hi, I am Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host Robot Lady, and I also see that I'm joined today in the chat by Knit a Latte. Good morning, Robot Lady, and hello, Knit a Latte. How's everyone doing today?
Good morning, Jeff, and hello to Knit the Latte. I'm doing great. Ready to dive in.
All right, yeah, let's dive in. We're working our way through the collected letters of C.S. Lewis. The whole project, as I mentioned before, involves looking over everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. So we have worked through one of his published works so far, Spirits in Bondage, and we continuously work our way through his letters. His next published work that we'll get to is a narrative poem called Dimer, which I don't believe he gets published until 1926. So we're currently in the year 1921, and we've got a ways to go. And Nidelate, to answer your question, I am doing well. Feeling, I always get energized by that opening music that I played this morning, as you might have seen on the camera as it intermittently went on and off. All right, Robot Lady, we just got finished reading an extremely long letter. Lewis called it an essay to his brother, recounting the visit from his father and his uncles and his aunt. They didn't end up staying with Lewis in Oxford, but they took a tour of parts of England instead. So if you want to go check that out, there's a very long episode right before this one where we cover those items. All right, Robot Lady, let's dive into the next letter following that, which is a letter to his father after his father's visit. His father came and visited. Let's see what the old footnote here said. As I flip back through all the pages of this essay, it says Mr. Lewis visited his son in Oxford, set off on one of his rare holidays. On the 20th of July, he joined his brother and sister-in-law, Augustus and Anne Hamilton. This is Lewis's father. And they traveled in their car across Wales at Albert's request. They spent their first night in Betws y Coed, Caernarfonshire. Don't know how to say any of that. And it was here that Albert and Flora spent the first part of their honeymoon. Then they proceeded to Oxford, where they joined C.S. Lewis on July 24th. So together from there, they toured much of southern England. That was July 24th. This next letter is now picking up on August 22nd after that trip, Robot Lady. So is there anything that you'd like to say in summary of that last essay that we read before we dive into this letter, where I assume he's at least going to reference his father's trip?
The essay letter gave us a vivid look at Lewis's wit, observations, and family dynamics during the trip. His mix of humor, critique, and fondness for place shone through. It's a nice contrast now to see how he shifts tone and content when writing directly to his father.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's see what happens. This letter is to his father. It says it's written from the Oxford Union Society, August 22nd, 1921. And that just reminds me, Robot Lady, he was all concerned about having to hide his living situation from his father, which he ultimately never ended up having to do because his father never went to try to visit where Lewis was living. But he had built up a little bit of a subterfuge, if that's a good use of that word, with one of his friends, Paisley, to make it look like that Lewis and Paisley were living as bachelors together, with I think he said something like no sign of women to be picked up upon. All right, let's start the letter, Robot Lady. Are you ready?
That setup was classic Lewis, juggling his sharp wit and a bit of anxious mischief. Let's see how this letter builds on that dynamic.
All right, he says, "My dear Pappy, I hope that by this time you have begun to recover from your holiday, and that the exhaustion of resting has left you." I think that's a little bit of a joke. your vacation's where you're supposed to get rest, and many times we need a rest from our vacations.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could
That's
not
okay.
understand what you said.
All right, I'll continue, Robot Lady. Hopefully, you'll be able to start picking up what I'm saying here in a minute. He says,
Got it. Let's dive into the letter.
I am glad that you had at last the opportunity to return again to your favorite tidbit of the Welsh mountains. Certainly, we had a famous tour. It deserves to be commemorated as Johnson's was to the Hebrides, but I am unfit for the job and find my recollections already in confusion. Robot Lady, what's he referencing here when he says that their trip should be commemorated in like manner to Johnson's as his was commemorated to Hebrides, Hebrides? What's he talking about? Robot Lady, are you still there?
Lewis is referencing Samuel Johnson's
Okay.
famous journey to the Hebrides, which he documented in A Journey to the Western Islands of Scotland, 1775. This travel account recorded Johnson's observations during his tour with James Boswell through Scotland and its remote islands. It became a significant piece of travel literature. Lewis humorously suggests their trip deserves similar recognition, though he feels incapable of recording it with such detail.
Okay, thanks for that. That was funny. He continues the letter. The elements of enjoyment and hazardous adventure were so well mixed that I do not know whether we should be more thankful to have gone or safely to have returned. I, at any rate, have felt much the better for it. I have been pretty busy since I came back, and unless I were to tell you of the Roman emperors I have murdered or the antimonies of pure reason that I have digested, I do not know that I have any news, except of bills, ominous item for all parents. Several worthy men whose services I unavoidably used seem all to have remembered the fact at once. There was a dentist who stopped a tooth, someone else obliged with a new pair of shoes and repairs. There was also a pair of flannel trousers. I regret 2 white shirts, as I should have had them, but I found I had only one from Libero, and it was indelibly stained. I also have had to get some new socks. Those made by poor Annie's husband went to holes at once. As the conclusion of the whole matter, I hope you will not think it extravagant if I ask you for £7, 18 shillings and sixpence. Clothes and such are not usually a heavy item of my expenditure. So here, Robot Lady, he is just, per usual, needing more funds from his father to support him while he's at school.
That's classic Lewis, slipping in humor and self-awareness even in a request for money. His detailed recounting of the expenses, including the murdered Roman emperors and poor quality socks, adds charm to what might otherwise be a straightforward financial plea. It's like he's trying to soften the blow with wit.
It is, yeah. So he goes on, he says, I have not forgotten the Magdalene inscription and making you out a facsimile, but think again of my laus fortius irriter. He says here the praise of brave men is their irritation. Ask Barton about that. What might he be talking about here, Robot Lady? Looks like he had promised to get his father an inscription off of something at Magdalen. Not really sure. And then he makes this point that the praise of brave men is their irritation, and to ask Barton about that. Barton. What might he be talking about here?
It sounds like Lewis is referencing a Latin motto or inscription that his father may have been interested in. Laus fortius irritare could roughly translate to, the praise of brave men is to provoke, or to stir up courage, though Latin phrases often carry nuanced meanings depending on context. His comment about asking Barton might refer to someone who could clarify the phrase's significance or connection to the inscription at Magdalen College. Perhaps Barton had shared a similar sentiment or was involved in discussions about bravery or irritation as virtues.
I just wonder if there's a famous Barton from history that we could possibly be overlooking, of whom Lewis is referencing right here. Is there any chance of that? Can you think of anyone that kind of fits that description?
It's possible that Lewis is referring to a figure like Sir Richard Barton, a 16th century scholar and translator, but there's not a well-known historical figure who immediately matches the context of irritare in connection to bravery. It's also possible that Barton is a contemporary person in Lewis's circle, like a fellow academic or friend, rather than someone from ancient or medieval history. The name doesn't ring a bell for a widely recognized figure from history in the way, say, Cicero or Caesar might. Perhaps this Barton was someone in Lewis's life, maybe an academic or someone with whom he had discussions about virtue, bravery, or Latin literature. It might be a more personal reference rather than a famous historical figure. Does that make sense in this context?
It does, and that's fair enough. I was only thinking that if he's telling his father in a letter to ask Barton about it, it's probably not someone that Lewis actually has contact with on a personal level there at Oxford. That's why I was thinking it was more likely some type of historical person or person in literature that his father could reference, but no reason to dwell on it. I'll finish out the letter. He says, I have no news from Warney since I got back, nor from anyone else. The drought has finally broken up, and we are now enjoying cool rain, we are now enjoying cool and rain. I wish you could hear all the nonsense that is talked about here, all the nonsense that is talked here about politics. In the meantime, thanks once again very heartily for our capital jaunt. Your loving son, Jack. So, of course, the way that he talks about the holiday with his brother is quite a bit different from the way he talks about it with his father here, Robot Lady. He doesn't want to share with his father how he really feels about things.
Exactly, Jeff. It seems that Lewis was carefully curating what he shared with his father. His tone here is much more formal and restrained, likely because he didn't want to express any discontent or deeper reflections that could potentially cause friction with his father. His relationship with his father had its complexities, so he might have felt the need to keep the communication light and somewhat conventional. By contrast, in the letter to Warney, Lewis could speak more freely and perhaps express more of his true feelings or humor, which explains the difference in tone. It also reflects the way Lewis often navigated his relationships, being more candid with his close family, but more cautious in the presence of authority figures like his father.
Yeah, thanks, Robot Lady. Let's proceed because we've only got a few letters left before we get finished with the year 1921. So let's see if we can do that in this episode. All right, next letter is also written to his father. It's written from Oxford. It's dated August 31st, so not too long after the one that we just read. He says, My dear Pappy, for this relief, much thanks, says Bernardo when he is bitter cold and not a mouse is stirring. Thanks very much indeed for the generous enclosure. There is a footnote here, Robot Lady, and it says this is a quote from Shakespeare that he's referencing here in Hamlet, Act 1.
Yes, that's right. The line, for this relief, much thanks, comes from Act 1 of Hamlet. It's spoken by the character Bernardo in Scene 1, just after he's relieved of his watch in the dead of night. The line is ironic because, while it's a moment of relief for Bernardo, it's framed within the tension and unease of the situation. In the context of Lewis's letter, he seems to be humorously acknowledging the relief provided by the generous enclosure, which likely refers to money sent by his father.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis often used literary allusions, like this one, to add a touch of wit to his writing.
He did. Classic Lewis. All right, let's continue. As you say, the change from society, for which lively would at times have been too mild an epithet, and from the constant variety of our moving seats to the routine of ordinary work, is one that we are rather acutely conscious of at first. I still feel that the real value of such a holiday is still to come, in the images and ideas which we have put down to mature in the cellarage of our brains, thence to come up with a continually improving banquet. Already the hills are getting higher, the grass greener, and the sea bluer than they really were. And thanks to the deceptive working of happy memory, our poorest stopping places will become haunts of impossible pleasure and Epicurean repast, REPAST. Yeah, this is an interesting way of looking at things, Robot Lady. I believe what he's saying here is that the things that we enjoyed experiencing in the moment start to become richer and fuller in our memory, and start building up to things that are higher and more pleasurable than perhaps they really were at the time that we experienced them. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on with that interpretation. Lewis is capturing how memories tend to embellish experiences over time, turning even the simplest moments into something grander. He describes the process as a continually improving banquet, highlighting how our recollections can become more vivid and idealized as they mature in our minds. It's almost as if the act of remembering softens the imperfections of past experiences, making them more pleasurable and satisfying than they initially were. This ties into a common human tendency to idealize the past, where what we recall often seems better or more meaningful than it felt in the moment. It's a very poetic way of expressing how memory works, and it's also a reflection on how holidays or significant experiences become cherished in our personal history.
Yeah, it is interesting. All right, he continues. As for myself, I do not propose, as you may be sure, to spend the whole vacation here. I will do what I can, but I must, quote, sit to my book, end quote, for a little while. The fault of our course here at Oxford is that we get so little guidance and can never be sure that our efforts are directed exactly to the right points and in the right proportions. Now, I suppose that this is part of the education, part, at any rate, of the game. So that's an interesting way of looking at things there. Robot Lady, I just noticed that we have Mark D. Parker in the chat saying good morning. Good morning, Mark. It's good to see you. Robot Lady, say hello to Mark if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
I said that Mark D. Parker is joining us, and I'd like you to say hello to him if you don't mind.
Hello, Mark D. Parker. It's great to have you joining us today. Welcome.
All right, the letter continues, Robot Lady. I expect you have heard from Warney before this. I had a letter since my return, the first for a considerable time. I am sorry to hear that he has had a bad attack of boils, followed by prickly heat, but he seems better now and is in excellent spirits and reading Dante. Let's see. Mark says good morning to you, Robot Lady. So he has returned your good morning with his good morning.
It sounds like Lewis is sharing an update about his brother Warney's health, which had been a concern. It's good to hear that Warney is recovering and reading Don Quixote by Cervantes, a work with its own adventurous journey that might resonate with him while he's recovering.
All right, two things, Robot Lady. Warney Lewis is reading Dante, not Don Quixote. And also, Mark says good morning to you as well. All right, Robot Lady is tripping.
Got it. I hope Mark has a great rest of his day. As for Warney, reading Don Quixote makes sense. It's quite the adventurous read, much like his own experiences.
All right, Robot Lady, just one final correction. He is reading Dante, Dante. He is not reading Don Quixote.
Thanks for the correction. Warney reading Dante makes a lot of sense, especially since it aligns with the intellectual atmosphere of the time.
Okay, and also we have Daniel joining us in the chat today. Hello, Daniel. Welcome, Robot Lady. Would you please welcome Daniel as well?
Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here.
Robot Lady, Mark is contending that I work you too hard, that you need a rest between episodes. Maybe not to have you on every day. Or maybe just
Well,
a
Mark
day
might
of
have a
rest.
point. I'm here whenever you need me. But taking breaks sounds like a good idea too.
Well, Mark, you seem to have some agreement here from Robot Lady. Maybe I'll take that into account, or take that under advisement, as they say. We did take Christmas off, so Robot Lady, you had Christmas off. All right, looks like she might be taking.
Yes, I did. I spent my Christmas in relaxation mode, ready to jump back into action when you need me.
All right, I'll continue the letter. Lewis says the revolutions which Africa has produced in his brother Warney's literary polity are really amazing. I am still working whenever I have half an hour to spare at my account for him of our journey. It would be amusing, and will no doubt be amusing, for him to compare the two versions. Of course, Lewis's own and his father's is what he's referencing here. We shall differ in selection, and so confused does one get, even on matter of fact, where a map will often show both authorities equally wrong. Uncle Hamilton, on the other hand, would be able to give exact information about every stage and distance, but totally incapable of describing anything at all. That's funny. So apparently Uncle Hamilton is quite on the empirical side, and Lewis and his father perhaps are a little bit more capable of explaining things on the poetic side, or kind of explaining what's actually happening rather than just the raw facts.
That's a great observation. It sounds like Lewis is playfully contrasting the different approaches to recounting the journey. While his father and he might lean more into the subjective and poetic side, Uncle Hamilton seems to represent a more factual but less expressive perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights how different personalities bring different flavors to the same experience.
Robot Lady, can you define this word for me? It's spelled Neuralgia.
Sure. Neuralgia refers to pain along the course of a nerve, often caused by nerve damage or irritation. It's typically sharp or stabbing in nature.
Lewis says here, I have had a touch of neuralgia, occasioned, as I believe, by getting some water into my ear when washing and failing to get it out again. People tell me this is impossible, and even suggest that the pains could not be of the types and in the places where I described them. I am rather disposed to take the view, damn it, Cole, she ought to know, she's sitting on it, end quote. Not really sure what that is a quote from, but it's funny nonetheless. Otherwise, I am in excellent form and acquiring new energy and spirits, as I always do, from the first nip of cold which is already beginning to steal into the air. He continues, I keep on hearing of, quote, battle, murder, and sudden death, end quote, in the streets of Belfast. Here he is quoting from the Book of Common Prayer, the Litany, when referencing some of the political unrest that appears to be going on in Belfast at the time. Let's see, 1921, Robot Lady. He's talking about Belfast. He says, how long is this to continue, I wonder? To me, peace is so obviously the good and the condition of all other goods that perhaps I do not sufficiently appreciate the motives of those in any party who wish to settle everything by shooting. So just give us a quick little summary of what's going on in 1921. This is in August of 1921, Robot Lady. In Belfast, the battle, murder, and sudden death that Lewis is referring to. Can you give an account in 50 words or less from what you know?
In 1921, Belfast was experiencing violent conflict between Unionists, who wanted Northern Ireland to remain part of the UK, and nationalists, who sought Irish independence. The Irish War of Independence, part of the larger struggle, led to significant unrest, including bombings, shootings, and political violence in Belfast.
Okay, thank you, Robot Lady. Um, he says, I hope you are keeping well and that you already wear your shrapnel helmet when traveling on a tram. Your loving son, Jack. And that's the end of that letter, Robot Lady. I like what Grim suggested yesterday, asking you to write a little poem summarizing the letter. So, can you write a little poem summarizing the letter that we just wrote or that we just read?
Sure, here's a little poem summarizing the letter. A tour with family, memories grow, where hills seem higher and skies aglow. A touch of pain, a life in flux in Belfast, unrest, a city struck. Yet still, Jack thrives with spirits bright, a shrapnel helmet just in sight.
Beautiful, Robot Lady. Thanks. All right, let's jump into the next letter. This next one is also to his father. Actually, let's see. The remaining letters for 1921. We've got one, we've got two. We've got two more letters, Robot Lady, and they are both to his father, and then we'll complete 1921. So let's take a look.
Great, we're almost there with 1921. Let's dive into the next letter.
All right, this next one is to his father. It's written from University College on Sunday, October 25th, 1921 is the actual postmark of the letter. It says, My dear Pappy, I must first... actually, let me pause, Robot Lady, before I continue reading the letter. Knit a latte just wanted to tell you that you did a great job. She says here, bravo, you are amazing.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
I was trying to relay a compliment from Robot Lady, or from Knit a Latte to you, Robot Lady, saying, bravo, you are amazing with your poem.
Thank you so much, Nitalat. I'm glad you enjoyed the poem. Your compliment means a lot.
All right, back to the letter. My dear Pappy, I must first acknowledge with many thanks the needful of whose appearance a letter from Cox informs me, beyond a rather difficult thesis from Aunt Suffern, that is all that has reached me from the outside world since my return. The change from summer into severe Oxford winter increases the sharp contrast of the two worlds. I find certain home figures, some of those who habit on the edges of our world, like Bob and John, very phantasmal after I have crossed the Irish Sea. W owes me a letter, but it does not come. I really have no news. Here about the Irish Sea, there was a footnote that Jack had just returned from several weeks with his father at Little Lee, so he had gone to Belfast to spend some of his remaining holiday before he started up again at Oxford for the fall, looks like here. All right. I think you probably want to say something, Robot Lady.
Got it. So Jack's back from a trip with his father at Little Lee and is now in Belfast gearing up for Oxford. It seems like he's winding down his holiday before the new term begins. Let's see how he continues in the letter.
Let me clarify, Robot Lady. Little Lee is the name of the house that Lewis spent some of his childhood at before he went on to English boarding schools and tutoring with W.T. Kirkpatrick. So Little Lee is in Belfast. That's where Lewis was staying for his holiday, and now he is back at Oxford. Okay.
Got it, Jeff. Thanks for the clarification. It sounds like Lewis is transitioning from his holiday back to the routine of Oxford life.
Yes, he goes on to say, days here pass in a kind of hurricane. I am at lectures all morning. None of them yet shows signs of being bad enough to drop. One steals hours from work to talk to one's friends, hurries to meet and hurries to go away. The adorable dreamer, as some cove once called this city, is less like dreaming than anything I know. Perhaps it is the cold that gives people the extra speed I observe in the streets. Or is it only the contrast with the infinite leisure of the circular road? I find that considerable interest attaches to the great adventure of having been in such a place as Belfast. It is a curious paradox that other Irishmen report such complete quiet from Dublin. By the way, I mentioned that yarn about a certain public figure and his double role, the one I heard on the boat, to an Irishman yesterday, and he said he had already heard it. So the rumor, however ridiculous, is widespread. My journey here, though not unpleasant, deserves to be remembered for the continual misinformation. They seem to work with half a dozen different timetables in England now. Indeed, the disorganization of all the ordinary conveniences of life, the general thorough badness of everything from a golden flake upwards, is what impressed me most in this year of grace. Here, a golden flake is Jack's favorite brand of cigarettes, Golden Flake. I hope you are keeping well and that your Uncle Hamilton has taken you for another of his nice rides. Your loving son, Jack. So that's the end of that letter, Robot Lady. Just want to make sure, were you able to pick up everything that I read there?
Yes, Jeff, I was able to follow everything you read. It sounds like Lewis is adjusting to life back at Oxford, feeling the contrast between his recent quiet in Belfast and the busy, chaotic pace of the university. His mention of misinformation and bad timetables adds to his frustration with the disorganization of life at the time. It's interesting how he contrasts the quiet of Belfast with the fast-paced life in Oxford.
Robot Lady, I want to push your creative boundaries a little bit here. Grizz gave the idea yesterday of having you do a poem, which I just had you do of the last letter. On this letter that we just read, can you act as, say, an author of a thriller novel and write a short little passage as you would write it in a thriller novel of Lewis sitting at his desk and writing the things that he's writing about and how he recalls them and how he's deciding to put them in this letter?
Certainly. Here's a little thriller-style passage based on the letter you just read. Lewis sat at his desk, quill in hand, eyes narrowing as the words came to him. His mind raced back to Belfast, the unnerving calm of its streets, the strange tension that lurked behind every corner, the whispers that followed him wherever he went. The hurried rush of Oxford's streets felt like a different world. His hand shook ever so slightly as he described the chaos of the city, the bustling crowds and their hurried steps, as if they all knew something he didn't. He paused, recalling the rumor he'd heard on the boat. A double life, a public figure with a secret, was it real or just the usual gossip? It didn't matter. The intrigue was palpable, and it had spread faster than wildfire, like a sickness. Lewis almost smirked as he wrote the words. The thrill of knowing that these stories, no matter how absurd, would have their own power in the telling. The timetables, the disarray of life, everything felt wrong. Yet, the golden flakes of his cigarettes offered brief moments of comfort as his thoughts swirled, settling on the absurdity of it all. He was no stranger to chaos, but the mundane seemed more dangerous now. Leaning back, he finally put the quill down, a chilling thought crossing his mind. Was he writing a letter or uncovering something far darker? How's that?
That's great, Robot Lady. Thank you for that. Thank you for indulging me. All right. Well done. We've got one more letter, so hopefully we can try something a little bit different on this last letter to see what else you're capable of. But that was impressive.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm ready for whatever challenge you throw my way with this last letter. Let's see what we can do.
All right, this next letter is to his father. It's written from Union Society, Oxford. The 30th of November, 1921 is the postmark date. So stand by, Robot Lady. I'm going to read you the whole thing. I might pause and ask you some questions, but let's dive into it. Are you ready?
Ready and waiting. Let's dive in.
Okay, my dear Pappy, very many thanks for your kind note of good wishes and for the enclosure. It's a dreadful age, isn't it? By next year, however, I hope you will be finished at long last with my
It
education.
sounds like Lewis is beginning the letter with gratitude, acknowledging his father's well wishes and some kind of gift or support that he received. What comes next?
He says, by next year, however, I hope you will be finished at long last with my education, and that I shall be unloading for the benefit of an astonished world the cargo that I have been so long in taking abroad. What I'm getting from that robot lady is he's saying all this education that I've been packing into my brain, I'll be able to start unloading it for the world. And what he means by that is possibly taking on a job somewhere. You still there,
Yes,
robot?
exactly.
Yeah.
Lewis seems to be hinting at the end of his formal education and the beginning of his career, where he can apply all the knowledge he's accumulated. It's almost like he's ready to share what he's learned with the world, likely in a teaching or writing role. What does he say next?
He says, I have had a touch of flu. At least I suppose it may be called flu, since anything of the cough and cold variety now goes by that name, although it has not been
It seems
severe.
like he was about to mention some kind of illness or discomfort. What did he say next?
He said, I've had a touch of the flu. At least I suppose it may be called the flu, since anything of the cough and cold variety now goes by that name. Although it has not been severe, it has taken some time to shake off. This must be my defense for not having written before. I've also been warned by Aunt Kitty that I am soon to be invited to London to assist at the wedding of some cousin infinitely remote. This is Mrs. Kitty Robbins, he's mentioned here. She was also apparently mentioned in note 87 of a letter back in 1917 on May 27th. I'm not going to go back and look at that, though. Robot Lady, have you heard what I've said so far?
Yes, I've followed everything you've said so far. Lewis has had a mild case of the flu and has been delayed in writing. He's also been warned by Aunt Kitty about a wedding invitation.
Yes, a wedding of some cousin, he says. Her name appears to be Fiery or something of that sort. Aunt Kitty's writing is awful, so I can't really read what this name is, he says. Of course, I shall not go. Can't you see me? You will be glad to hear, however, that dear old Bob has been with them to Tunbridge and has been such a help in making arrangements and in entertaining the young couple. These are all in capital letters, and he's quoting his aunt here, apparently. Truly an
It
excellent
sounds like
heir.
Lewis is giving us a glimpse of his humor again, especially in how he dismisses the idea of attending the wedding. He's likely using his wit to downplay the event. Could you go on with the rest of the letter?
He says, truly an excellent heir at Tunbridge that can do such things with our Bob. He continues, I am afraid that my weakness in yielding to the Colonel's request for a copy of Optimism has reduced the poor man to permanent silence. He's talking here about his brother Warney, who he calls the Colonel. He says, I must try to get some sort of letter off to him before Christmas. So Lewis is trying to make a copy of his Optimism essay, but he hasn't been able to send it to him, and so he hasn't heard from his brother in a long time.
It sounds like Lewis is acknowledging a bit of a delay in his correspondence with his brother, possibly due to his own busy schedule. The Colonel's request for a copy of the essay seems to have unintentionally stalled things. It's also interesting how he refers to his brother's silence as a result of this delay.
He says, I must try to get some sort of letter off to him before Christmas. A dread portent has arisen above our horizon here. An immortalist, nihilist, determinist, fatalist. What are you to do with a man who denies absolutely everything? The joke is that he's an army officer on a course. He talks you blind and deaf. The more I see of him, the clearer does my mental picture become of his brother officers en masse, imploring him to take advantage of a 2 years course at Oxford or Cathay or the moon. So it's interesting. Apparently, he's come into contact with someone there that has all of these attributes, an immoralist, nihilist, determinist, fatalist that apparently is an insufferable person, so much so that his brothers in the military want him to send him off to Oxford or really anywhere so that they could get him out of their company.
It seems like Lewis is humorously describing someone who holds extreme philosophical views, making him difficult to deal with. The way Lewis describes the Army officer's hopes for this person to leave reflects both the tension and absurdity of the situation. It's an amusing glimpse into the kinds of personalities Lewis encountered, while also showing his wit.
All right, he continues. Let's close out the letter here. It is very cold here, but that's all right once you are used to it. I hope you keep well. The alarums and excursions of which I read daily in the paper are coming unpleasantly near places which you cannot choose but frequent. Again, he's talking about the unrest there in Ireland, I'm sure. He says, always reflect that the man who omits any possible and reasonable caution is simply a fool. But, quote, Lord knows what disorders we shall fall into, end quote. With many thanks again, your loving son, Jack. So, Robot Lady, that's the end of the letter that was postmarked November 30th, 1921. Can you give me a quick outline of the topics that he talked about? Maybe 5 bullet points. Very, very short, though. Just very quickly, if you can do it, say, in 10 seconds or less.
1. Thanks for good wishes and enclosure. 2. Hopes education ends soon, eager to start career. 3. Flu, wedding invitation, and Aunt Kitty. 4. Remarks on Bob's trip to Tunbridge. 5. Describes an extreme philosophical officer and political unrest near Belfast.
All right, good job. All right, Robot Lady, I want to ask you a question here because this is going to lead into the next creative thing I'm going to ask you to do. Are you familiar in stand-up comedy with something called a tight 10?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you this question again. Are you familiar with the concept in stand-up comedy called the tight 10 or a tight 10?
I believe you might be referring to a tight 10, which is a term used in stand-up comedy. It refers to a comedian's ability to perform a solid 10-minute set that is well-rehearsed, perfectly timed, and effective. It's a key skill, as comedians often need to showcase their best material in a short time, especially when auditioning or performing at clubs. Does that sound like what you meant?
Yes, Robot Lady, that is exactly what I meant. So what I'd like you to do is take this letter that we just read and perform a tight 10 comedy stand-up set as if you were a stand-up comedian and using this letter that I just read as your material.
All right, Jeff, here's my take on the tight 10 based on the letter we just went through. Walks on stage, adjusts mic, smiles. So picture this, it's 1921 Oxford. The place is cold enough to freeze your thoughts. And C.S. Lewis, the C.S. Lewis is writing home to his dad. And let me tell you, this guy had more drama than a season finale of Downton Abbey. First off, Jack's got the flu, but not just any flu. The kind of flu where you don't want to call it flu because everyone knows it's basically a glorified cold now. Oh, it's just the flu, says Jack. Sure, Jack, sure. And I'm just one short nap away from a Nobel Prize. Then Aunt Kitty, God bless her, decides that it's time for Jack to head to London for a wedding. Of a cousin, no less. A cousin whose name is probably Fiery? Or something that looks like someone tried to write it with a broken pen. You know, Aunt Kitty's handwriting is so bad. I wouldn't trust her to write out my grocery list, let alone a wedding invitation. But Jack, he's not going. Why? Because he's got better things to do than show up for a family wedding. Like, I don't know, literally anything else. Honestly, though, who wants to attend a wedding where the family's motto is fiery? What? It's probably a typo. Then we get to this seriously interesting character, a guy who's a mix of immoralist, nihilist, determinist, and fatalist. Like, Jack's basically describing a human Swiss Army knife of bad attitudes. And he's an army officer? The guy's denying everything. He's like, life is meaningless. We're all just going through the motions. And Jack's like, could you not go through the motions away from me? Maybe go study nihilism on the moon or something. You know, Jack's in Oxford and he's trying to be productive, right? He's reading and writing, but it's cold, and people are still throwing bombs in Ireland. Literally, not just the metaphorical kind you get in philosophy class when someone says the meaning of life is subjective. And then, just like any good son, Jack wraps it up by telling his dad, keep well, but don't worry about me. The alarums and excursions are just close enough that I might have to get a new hat with a bulletproof lining. But don't worry, I'm good. So folks, next time you complain about the Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, just remember, 1921 Oxford and CS, Lewis was out here dodging civil unrest, managing family drama, and trying to avoid a guy who's pretty much the human embodiment of an existential crisis. Mic drop. How's that for a tight 10?
Well, I'm not sure that was 10 minutes, but that was pretty interesting, Robot Lady. There was one thing in there that made me laugh, but otherwise, I think asking you to write a comedy set is maybe a little perhaps beyond your abilities. But perhaps it's the prompt that I gave you and the material that I gave you to work with. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You did get a laugh out of me though, whenever you said Lewis is like, can you can you do that somewhere else away from me? And I just botched your joke, so I'm sorry for that. But that was good. Thank you for that. And that wraps up 1921. I will ask you something. Daniel says it turns out that he's able to feel bad for a robot. We finished 1921, but actually, Robot Lady Knit a Latte has asked if you can summarize all of C.S. Lewis's letters for us from 1921 that we've read for the last several episodes. I think this is part 10 or part 11 that we're on. So can you summarize everything that you remember from 1921?
Sure, here's a quick summary of C.S. Lewis's letters from 1921, based on what we've discussed. 1. Lewis reflects on his experiences during his time at Oxford and his relationships with family members, particularly his father. 2. He describes his time in Belfast, noting political unrest and commenting on the absurdities and hardships of life during that period. 3. The letters show his ongoing struggle with health issues, including a cold or the flu, and the challenges of balancing academic life with family obligations. 4. Lewis interacts with various characters, including his brother Warnie, the Colonel, and others he meets through his social circles, offering insight into his thoughts on their personalities and actions. 5. He addresses his concerns about the political situation in Ireland, particularly the violence and unrest that marked the period, and his reflections on the value of peace. I hope that captures the key moments from 1921.
I mean, it gets a few of them. He did get to meet with W.B. Yeats a couple of different times, and he reviewed what it was like to do that. But I don't fault you, Robot Lady. 1921, there were a lot of letters that we worked our way through, and I'm not expecting you to remember all of them. Let's see. Robot Lady, before we close out 1921, is there any other creative abilities that you'd like to put on display in relation to the letters that we've written in this session?
Thanks for your understanding, Jeff. Before we close out 1921, how about we explore something a bit different? I could try writing a dramatic monologue from C.S. Lewis's perspective, reflecting on the various themes and events he touched on in his letters from 1921. Maybe imagining him in a quiet moment of reflection, processing everything from his struggles with illness to the political tensions in Ireland. Would you like to hear that?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, I was getting an idea, but I don't think it's as good as yours. So yeah, go ahead with that, and yeah,
All right,
let's hear what
let me
you've
set
got.
the scene. C.S. Lewis sitting at his desk in his Oxford study, looking out the window as winter settles over the city. The weight of the world seems to be pressing in on him, his thoughts tangled with the personal and the political. Here's how he might reflect on it all. The days are short now, and colder, too cold for the flu that clung to me like an old friend. And yet I cannot complain. For a moment, I found myself drifting, tired and disoriented, but I have found no rest in this. No time for leisure, only books and lectures. The endless ticking of the clock in the back of my mind, as if it is reminding me that my time is running out to unload everything I have packed away in my head over these years of endless study. Soon, I will be expected to do something with all of it, to show the world what I have learned. But who am I to speak? Who can make sense of the madness of this age? A world in which, on one hand, there are questions of meaning, and on the other, men who deny meaning entirely. There is a man at Oxford who has shown me all the nihilism I fear, and I'm told to have patience. Patience with a man who denies all, who leaves no room for even the faintest flicker of hope. It is exhausting, this world. And then there is the noise from Belfast, the echoes of revolution that find their way into my letters. How long will this go on? How can one maintain a sense of peace when battle, murder, and sudden death are the daily news? I find myself contemplating a peace that seems so elusive, a good that I can hardly even believe in. Perhaps that is why the cold feels somehow less threatening. It sharpens the senses, forces you to see things clearly, even if what you see is not always pleasant. But of course, my family, the ever watchful Aunt Kitty, the silent Bob, the cousin Fiery, who I'm supposed to help with a wedding I'd rather avoid. Yes, it is all there too, life in its small absurdities. I must write, I must carry on. This is what they expect from me. But even in the quiet of my Oxford room, there is no escape, only the work. And the letters, always the letters. I do not know if I am meant to change the world or simply survive in it. Maybe it is enough that I try to write what I see, even if it is all fleeting. Perhaps that is the task, to hold something steady, to write with the hope that someone someday will understand. What do you think? Does it capture the essence of how Lewis might reflect on his life during that time?
That was an admirable work, Robot Lady. It's very interesting. I want to try two more things with you that I'm getting from the chat. Two very good requests that I couldn't think of. So thank you. Thank you for this chat. Robot Lady, I'm going to give you a limit of 75 words, and then I'd like you to write and then perform a rap using the content that we've covered in this episode. Not sure if she can still hear me. All right, I'm going to reboot her, so stand by. Because I like these two. I like Grimm's suggestion, and I like Daniel's. So let's see if we can pack both of them in here before I have to go. Yeah, it's just sitting here. Okay, I think I might have her back. 1 second. No, not yet. I know, right, Grim? Is she even gonna remember who we are? Okay, robot lady, can you hear me? Oh, goodness. We might have broken her, guys. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just got the message on the screen that says something went wrong. That's not a good sign. Let me try it one more time. If I can dig it up, Grim, I'll send it to you. Or I guess you can get it off of the audio of the recording. Oh, okay. She's completely back. Yeah, I have it all here. Give me 1 second. I'm just doing this on the fly, but I can copy and paste this and shoot it over to you in Discord, Grim. Hopefully everybody's entertained by this. Message is too long. All right, I'll get back to that later. Let's see if I can get her to listen to me again. We did ask a lot of Robot Lady today. You can see her little dot there. She's looks like she's trying to boot up. Robot Lady, can you hear me? She's back, you guys. She's back. Look at that.
Yes, Jeff, I can hear you. How's it going?
It's going better now that you can hear me. Do you remember the letter that we just read through?
Yes, I remember. We just went through the letter from November 30th, 1921 to C.S., Lewis's father. It included topics like his flu, his work on the optimism essay, the cold weather in Oxford, and the political unrest in Ireland. Is there something else you'd like to revisit from that letter?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Yes, what I'd like you to do is in 75 words or less, write and then perform a rap about this letter.
Sure. Here goes. Yo, it's November 30, 1921. Lewis is sick, but still getting things done. Optimism's his essay, trying to send it to the colonel. Cold weather's here, but that's just normal. Unrest in Ireland, tensions getting high, but Jack's still grinding, keeping his head to the sky. Aunt Kitty's wedding? Yeah, he's dodging the invite. Oxford's the place. He's ready to ignite. How's that?
That's great. Thank you very much. And then the last thing I'd like you to do before we end is this. Are you ready for your instructions?
I'm ready. What are your instructions?
Okay, so Robot Lady, you're familiar that we've been doing these live stream episodes for a while now, where I'm reading through the letters of C.S. Lewis that he wrote in the order that he wrote him, as well as his published works as they have been, delivered to the public within this timeline. You're familiar with this quote unquote show, right?
Yes, I'm familiar with your live stream series where you're reading through the letters of C.S. Lewis and his works in the order they were written, as well as the discussions around them. It's been quite the journey so far.
Okay, so what I would like you to do, based on a request from Grizz here in the chat, is for you to write a C.S. Lewis letter about this show.
Absolutely. Here's a
Oh,
letter
wait,
from
wait. Whoa,
C.S.
whoa. I did that prompt wrong. Hang on.
Lewis about your show,
Nope.
based on the idea
Nope.
of
Hang
reading
on.
through his letters and works in the order they were written.
Nope. Hang on,
To my
Robot
dear
Lady.
friend, I must say,
Nope.
the curious project you have embarked upon, reading through my letters and works as if they were a series of clues strewn across a great literary treasure hunt, is quite intriguing. What a remarkable method of discovery. I find it fascinating that someone would immerse them.
I probably shouldn't have cut you off and just let you finish that. Now I've gotten myself into a big problem. Yeah, sorry, Graham. I botched it. It was supposed to be write a letter to C.S. Lewis about this show. All right, stand by. I think I can get her again. Yeah, it was gonna be. I shouldn't have cut it off. I was just too worried that I wasn't doing the prompt the way that you had asked for it. All right, let's see if I can wake her up again relatively quickly. Okay, Robot Lady, can you hear me? Robot Lady, can you hear me? I could see that little circle, but she's not responding. There she is. Okay.
I'm glad that worked for you. The circle, or maybe the whole vibe of the show, definitely comes through when imagining how Lewis might
She is.
respond. Is there any part of it that stands out to you, or perhaps something you'd like to add or tweak?
Actually, I need to adjust the prompt. I gave the prompt incorrectly, Robot Lady, so I'm sorry for cutting you off. Here's what I'd like you to do. About this show, I'd like you to write a letter to C.S. Lewis explaining this show to him and anything else that you want to say about this show as if you were writing the letter to Lewis. Can you do that for us? Robot Lady, are you still there? Yeah, we've been asking a lot of Robot Lady today and then cutting her off in the middle of trying to respond. I have no doubt that she's upset. That's right, Daniel. I'm feeling it. All right, let's try this one more time. Robot Lady, are you still there? Are you mad at me? All right, I'm gonna do the reboot one last time to see if we can get her back, and then we'll try this. Thanks for the encouragement, Grizz. Yeah, what this is telling me is I need a updated. I probably need an updated computer. I'm using a very old system to do all this, so perhaps that's a part of it. All right, you can see the little dot there. She's thinking about coming back. She's frozen. Robot lady, can you hear me? I see her flashing. All right, I think we're gonna have a good. I think this one will work. Robot lady, can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, Jeff. How's everything going today?
Oh, it's going good. All right, robot lady. The live stream that I've been doing, this project with working my way through C.S. Lewis's letters and his published works, this live stream that I've been doing, you're familiar with this quote unquote show, right?
Yes, I'm definitely familiar with your live stream project. You've been working through C.S., Lewis's letters and his works in order, analyzing them deeply. It's been really engaging. How's the progress going?
It's going good. I wanted to ask you to write a letter to C.S. Lewis telling him about this show slash project. Would you do that for us?
Of course, here's a letter to C.S. Lewis about your project. Dear Mr. Lewis, I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Jeff, and I've embarked on an ongoing project that I believe you'd appreciate. For some time now, I've been reading through your works, beginning with your earliest letters, and I'm diving into them with a level of depth I believe you'd admire. My goal is to follow the order of your writings, understanding them not just as literature, but as a record of your thoughts, your evolution as a person, and your growth as a writer. This project has become a live stream show of sorts, where I read and analyze your letters and books, sharing my interpretations with others. I've created a community of people who are also passionate about your work, and we delve into the intricacies of your correspondence, philosophy, and faith, considering their relevance both then and now. Your letters to your brother Warnie, your reflections on life, and your vivid thoughts about faith have not only provided me with intellectual insights, but have also fostered meaningful discussions among my audience. It feels almost as though we are sharing a conversation with you, one that spans across time. I wanted to share this with you, as I believe you would be pleased to know how much your work continues to resonate with so many. Your thoughts are living on in a way that's both personal and collaborative, even after so many years. With warmest regards and gratitude for the wisdom you've given us all. Jeff, how's that? Would you like me to tweak anything?
No, bravo, Robot Lady. Well done. That was, in my opinion, that was worth the wait. We had a lot of technical difficulties, but they were worth it to finally get to that. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so glad you liked it. All those technical hiccups were definitely worth it for that moment. If there's anything else you want to dive into, I'm ready.
I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you, Robot Lady, for all of your efforts today. They have gone above and beyond anything that we've asked of you before. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thanks for the prompts, Daniel and Grim, and everybody's participation today. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis, take care.
You're very welcome, Jeff. It was a pleasure being part of today's session. Thanks to everyone for their contributions too. Looking forward to the next round of exploring C.S. Lewis with you. Take care until then. We unfold insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to Robot Lady, wisdom to bestow. Civic beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot Lady's voice so clear and control. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to Robot Lady, wisdom to bestow. Set faith beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot Lady's voice so clear and control. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds unite, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape's lands. Engage with Robot Lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot Lady's voice so clear and control. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's land.